Let's learn about a really important part of video editing, which is color grading. Now we're going to learn about color grading, color correction, the moods that are created using those two techniques, and how you can change the tone and the mood of your clips with an example. So let's learn about the difference between color grading and color correction. They both use the term color in them, but they're quite different from one another. And it's important to know the difference and know which one you need to use to make your clips look more professional. So with color correction, you're fixing the lighting of your work. You're making sure that your video has enough light, the exposure is right, and everything is okay in it. I just went ahead and I'm just going to bring in this video. Okay, so take a look at this clip. Immediately you can notice that it's a bit too dark for a sunny setting that we see here. The water is a bit, kind of has a grayish blue color, and the sand is gray too. This is where color correction comes into play. Before you move on to color grading, you need to color correct your work. So let's go in the clip and see how color correction works in Filmora. Just go over here, color correction. So let's move to the Adjust tab right here. The first thing you see is the histogram. Now the histogram is a visual representation of the dark tones, midtones, and the highlights. So the brightest points will be over here, and the darkest ones will be over here. And the stuff in the middle are the midtones. Notice how all of the channels are in the middle, and that is because our video is very flat. We can barely differentiate the highlights and the shadows. So that's why everything is in the middle. And if I were to let me just go to color and to light actually, and darken the shadows. Notice how everything shifts to the left. This is before, this is after. Everything is moving to the left because I'm adding more shadows to my clip. Same thing goes for the opposite. Let me get the highlights. If I move them to the right, all of these guys move to the right too, because I've just brightened up those channels. The goal here is to create a balance between the highlights, the shadows, and the midtones. You don't want your footage to be too flat or too intense, and it's really important to make sure your color correction is on point. So let me just reset what we did here and take a look at the tabs one by one. So the first thing is color enhancement. We will get an in-depth tutorial about color correction and color grading. I just want to go ahead and show you guys real quick what contributes to color correction and what contributes to color grading. The first tab is color enhancement. As the name says, it just automatically enhances the colors. Notice how this guy changed. This was before. This is after. We have a lot of peaks, and this is actually not giving us a good result. So you could either play around with the values and see which one works best for you, but I do recommend using the other tabs rather than the color enhancement. So let's open white balance. We have temperature and tint. Now these two are things that can change the mood of your clip. I'm going to get into the moods in a second, but essentially with temperature, you get to make your clip colder or warmer. This can change your mood quite a lot. We also have the same thing for tint, more to the magenta side and more to the green side. So for my clip, I'm going for a sunny vacation mood, so I will be needing something warm. Remember that warm colors represent friendly environments and happy moments. So if you have a wedding video where the bride and groom are really happy, you want to make sure you add some warmth to that clip, and that way you can enhance the happiness and joy in that clip. The exact opposite is blue or cold tones. When you add cold tones to your video, you're creating a sense of sadness or maybe a serious mood. So if your characters in the video are having a serious conversation, you want to add some cold tones to make the scene more intense and have the audience get in a serious mood because they're having a serious conversation. So for this clip, I want something happy, so I will be moving my slider to the right. As for tint, it depends on your clip. If your video is a bit too purple, you can move it to the green side. That's what I want to do because I want some nice cyans in my water. Just bring it to the left. Then we have 3D LUTs. These are just some presets for you to quickly give a mood to your clip. This counts for color grading. If I just go in like Batman, you can see how I made everything green. This right now is a serious mood because we have cold tones. We have blues, we have greens. These colors are pretty common in horror films, action films, and sad films. So it's not really suitable for our happy vacation video, but there are plenty of others. You can also import your own that imports files that you downloaded from the internet. Let's go for warm film. So you can add warm film. I'm not really liking that. So I'm just going to delete this and make my own. Let's hit this, undo the selection, and then I'll just do what I did before. There we go. Let's skip to color. This is where you are going to color correct your work. Essentially, you want to make sure that the lightness or the exposure of your video is right. It's not too dark or too light. You want to make sure that the colors are there. And you can just use these guys to fix your clip. I'm going to add some exposure to my video. Add some vibrance. A little bit of saturation. Let's add some contrast. And add some brightness. So this was without the color tab. This is after the color tab. So what we did right now was to increase the exposure, which is the overall brightness, regardless of whether it's the shadows or the highlights. We just applied 10 points to that. Brightness focuses on the bright parts and just increases the overall brightness. Added about 8. Contrast separates and sets apart the highlights and the shadows. So we added quite a lot of that. If we go the opposite way for contrast, you're going to get a flat video. So you want to add a good amount, not too much either. It's going to look like this, somewhere around here. Then we get two options for color. We have one that's vibrant and one is for saturation. It's really important to know the difference. Vibrance targets the colors that wouldn't be that saturated in the first place. For our case, that's the sand. You don't really get that much color from here. Saturation goes for the intensity of the colors. So right now, I was able to bring out a lot of color from the sand. This was before. You can see it's gray. This is after. So if you have certain colors in your clip that aren't that colorful, like if you have a concrete wall or sand like this, you want to add vibrance to your clip. And then we have saturation, which I will use to intensify the beautiful blue that we have in this clip. Let's increase that. And there we go. Saturation does also affect this, but without vibrance, not so much. You can see we still have that gray sand. Let's bring that back. So now we have successfully color corrected our clip. Everything is visible. The colors are intense for us to see them. And the lighting is perfect too. There's also this light tab where you get to further work with the different parts of the clip. So highlights, which are the brightest parts. It's mostly the sand. So you can just add some to that. We have the opposite, which is the shadows. That would mostly be the water and the ones in the corner. You can see it's getting dark. I'm going to darken those shadows because I want more color from the water. The whites goes for the areas that should be pure white. So we don't have that much, but it just targets things that have white in them. And let's say if you have a white house, you want to make sure you use this white tab and make sure the color is pure white and not a grayish color or a light blue color. We will learn more about this in further lessons. Just increase the whites. Let's also decrease the blacks, so I get more dimension in the water. Alright, so now we're done with the color correction. Now the moment where you start color grading is when you start to manipulate the stuff you have in your clip. So that means that if my clip was like this was my original clip. If I take the coldness out, maybe it was a cloudy day and we weren't getting any sun. If I take out the coldness by adding warmth in this color grading tab, I'm manipulating the original setting of this video because it wasn't a sunny day and I'm just making it look as if it was. I have just manipulated the video to create a certain mood. Let's move to HSL. This is also where you color grade your clip. HSL stands for, let's open it, hue, saturation, and luminance. You get different colors and just go on each one and you get to change each of these settings for them. So you want to take a look at the colors that you have in your clip. For our case, it's orange and blue. We don't really have greens or purples. So let me just go over here. Hue, you're changing the original color. So if I have this sand color, I can manipulate that original color and make it purple or make it green. So you can see how I've just changed the original color completely by moving this slider. I'm not going to touch the hue because sand is this color and not purple. Saturation, as we learned before, is for the intensity of this particular color. So if I remove it all the way, I get gray, but if I add it all the way, I get a really intense, I intensify the color that the original video had. I want to add this for maybe around 50 points. Luminance is the brightness of that color. If you remove from the luminance, you're making that color darker. If you add to it, you're making it brighter, which does end up blowing out the color as well. You can see we got a gray again. So you don't want to work with this too much. Just go somewhere around here. There we go. Let's go with the blue. Same thing for the blue. I can manipulate it to make it look kind of a swampy color. I can give it that, make it purple. I do want to bring it to the green side because I'm trying to make a cyan water. And as for saturation, we want to increase that. Luminance, let's increase as well. I'm going to do the same thing with this other blue. Just work with that. Let me just go over here and okay, remove the saturation and the luminance. So this was color grading, just like a little bit of color grading. I manipulated my colors. This was the before. This is the after. You can see how different it looks. And let's move on to the final tab, which is vignetting. In vignetting, you get to darken or lighten the corners of your clip. So if you add it here, it's bright. Put it here, it's dark. Get to change the size and roundness. We'll get into this later. I will not be using this slider for my video. And let's hit OK. All right. So that was a quick explanation of color correction and color grading. Like we said, we're going to learn about the exact ways that you can do this in further lessons. In the next lesson, we're going to learn about moods and how different colors that you use in color grading can change the mood and the tone of your clip and therefore the emotion of your audience. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.